Hi, welcome to Promo Insiders, a podcast from ASI's Counselor magazine. Here we cover the topics that matter most to the promotional products industry, from hard-hitting topics like COVID-19 to fun trends and new opportunities. I'm CJ Mitica, editor-in-chief of Counselor and Evangelist magazines, and today we're examining ASI's 2020 Global Ad Impression Study. Nate Kuzma, ASI's Executive Director of Market Research and Corporate Marketing, is joining us to discuss the findings and how you can apply them to your business. Plus, we'll talk about our new exclusive mask data. We've got plenty to discuss, so let's get started. So, Nate, the most important question I have right off the bat is, how has your last name been mispronounced over the years?
You know, it depends. It's not even mispronouncing. It depends on what nationality you are. If you're Hungarian, it's pronounced Kuchma. And if I ever go to a festival that's, where I run into a bunch of, Hungarians and I say Kuzma, they're like, no, that's wrong. That's not the way you pronounce it. Otherwise, people generally, it's gotten better as time has progressed. How's that? It used to be a lot worse. People would just look at it with a blank stare. Now it's actually, fortunately, gotten a little bit better.
Kuchma, is it? I think have you heard that one?
I've heard Kuchma. I've heard Kuzma. Kuzma, Kuchma, it's like it has there's many different iterations of it.
I'm not immune to that. It's Mitica, but it's definitely been pronounced Mitika is the normal one. Mitica sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So but last names are fun, as you can tell. So obviously we're here to talk about the ad impression study. This is a major study that we do every year, and there's a lot of interesting findings, and we're going to go through some of the most interesting data, including new exclusive mask reporting that we did in terms of the branding impact of masks.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to touch on some of the other interesting findings as well. And since we're doing this on Facebook Live, we love our viewers and listeners to chime in, whether with comments or if you got questions for Nate, whether it's regarding the ad impression study or other questions you have about promo and research and things we could research, or questions you may have. Feel free to ask them. We'll see what we can do to answer them throughout. And I just want to also remind that the ad impression study, the full ad impression study, is available on our website asicentral.com. And you can download a free copy. You just have to sign up and enter your name and company and some other small information. And you can get the full copy of the report. We're going to be showing you some slides today that are just touch on again some of the more interesting things that we want to discuss. But the full report has a lot more data and a lot more to dig into. So all that being out of the way, Nate, just to start off, what is the ad impression study? How often do we do it, and what are we looking to measure and find out with it?
Yeah, sure. So the ad impression study has been going on for well over a decade now. I mean, I joined ASI in about 2014, and we were already in like version 5 of it, right? So what it does, and it's sort of its genesis, was it wanted to show the value of promotional products using what are often determined to be like very traditional forms of advertising metrics. Right. So before the days when you could click on Google and you could run Google ads and you can see all the different impressions and everything, there's a way that you measure all other forms of advertising, whether that's print media or outdoor advertising or television advertising, and that's called cost per impression, right? So what we were doing with this study and what we've continued to do throughout the study up to this and including this latest iteration is we put everything on an even playing field, and we want to show everybody what the cost per impression is for a traditional promotional product and how many impressions an advertiser can get from using promotional products in their day-to-day activities. So that's really what that is showing. And we continue to expand the study every year. It used to be, I want to call it as archaic as us sending people out onto the streets of major American and foreign cities and stopping them on the road and saying, hey, let's talk about promotional products. We don't do that anymore.
I remember that because when I started, I was on, like, first week started on like a train to New York to stop and ask people. And me, Mr. People person, it's a lot of fun, confronting strangers on the street and asking them to take a survey.
Sure, in New York, that's very friendly. So we were actually doing that up until when I joined. And when I joined, I kind of said, we're not doing this anymore. So what we've done, we actually still will occasionally do that where we'll hire people within cities to do that because there are companies and individuals that specialize in that, if you know where to look. But we also, what we do now is we do a lot of it online using Google surveys. And what that enables us to do is get a much greater reach of overall just populations. Whereas we used to focus only on the cities, now we can focus on everybody. So if we're talking about city data or state data, we're not just talking about people in the major metropolitan areas, it goes throughout. We get a lot more people. Every year we interview, when we do the study, anywhere from an additional 50,000 to an additional 200,000 people. And what this does is it enables us to really expand the size of the data set we're using to just increase the amount of information we can share with the industry.
So obviously, this year has been a remarkable year for a lot of bad reasons. So for people who can be either new to the study or people in the promotional products industry who have who look to this study every year and whenever it comes out and look for valuable data, is there anything that this study can offer this year that maybe is different or even more necessary than in previous years?
Yeah, so it's interesting you said. It's interesting because for every year we've ever done the study, we've expanded some of the product categories, but they've always been very, very broad, right? It's always been writing instruments as a product category, or headwear or outerwear, right? And this was the first year where we did masks, right? And most of this study was fielded in late Q4 into Q1 of last year, right? So that was when everything, going back, all the way back to the halcyon days of Q1 when everything was normal. Yeah. Now we're in Q3 and everything's different, right? So we actually did a supplement to the study in August where we actually asked people around America about masks. What were their overall opinions about them, and how many people? And we asked the general questions that we do to come up with the data that we have. What are their opinions about them? How would they affect their opinions of the advertiser that gave them to them? What are the total number of impressions that can be expected by wearing a promotional mask? And by doing that, and by trying to make the data as current and relevant as possible, we hope to expand reach of the study to not only where it has been, which is on traditional promo products, and we have a lot of different categories, but also looking at the, sort of the new reality about, looking at face masks as a major promotional activity, one that has really helped sustain this industry over the last couple of months when other promotional product sales really dried up.
So we're going to get into some of that mask data in a second and examine some different ways. But just, Nate, your overall impressions after seeing the results and the findings regarding masks, what's your impression of them in terms of their effectiveness as a branded promotional product?
Oh, I think there's a huge potential here. I mean, they're not going away anytime soon. But I mean, obviously, depending on where you live, there might be a difference. But up here in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, they're not going away for a while. And it's sort of, they've moved beyond the fact where I have a college. I have one of my kids is in college, and anytime they go out, she works in the mall. She has to wear a mask, and they've almost become now like, you could say, almost like a fashion accessory, right? You're not just going to want to put on a standard black mask. You're not going to want to put on a surgical mask like was so prevalent. Now you want something that's going to keep you safe, but you also want it to be a little bit fashion forward. And I think that's an area where there's not as early on. There was a lot of reticence to actually even wanting to wear them. I think they're becoming much more accepted now, and you want to wear something like with all promotional products. If you're going to wear it or you're going to use it, you want it to look good. You want it to be functional, provide utility, and you want it to look good. And I think that there's a lot of potential there within our industry to do so.
So I would second that, and I'm going to speak from experience because just in the past 2 weeks, my daughters had started their fall activities. They started school, they started soccer, and they started Hebrew school. All three of those organizations, those places, gave them branded masks. Their school gave them branded masks. The soccer club gave out a drawstring bag with jerseys and a branded mask. Mm-hmm. And the synagogue, the Hebrew school, is selling branded masks. So now you're starting to see it where any sort of touch point with a consumer or with a member. And especially when there's opportunity to give something away, branded masks are becoming sort of an essential part of those giveaway packages.
Sure, and it's something that people are going to use, right? Like it's not something that's going to go sit in a drawer. People are going to use it, and don't think about impressions as only something that person's seeing, right? Think about the impressions that their family's seeing, that their friends are seeing, that when they're out in public, that people are noticing. I've noticed when people are walking around wearing, masks that they might have received from their company, like Merrill Lynch and such, which I've seen. Like different types of logos and such. So I think that if it looks good and it's functional and it's high quality, people will continue to use them, and they're going to be using them for a while. So it's something that it's certainly something that clients should invest in, and that they should be being pushed to, in addition to other types of promotional products, which also are going to be finding, a renewed, different type of niche in this environment where everything is going to be very sanitized, I guess you could say. And as business starts to come back, there's going to be new opportunities. I think that using the data that we have in the ad impression study and using the graphics that we've created this year really should help our members do so.
So on that note, let's pull up some of these data points specifically for the mass. And Kyle, our video guru, is going to be controlling this. So I'm going to give him some directions as we go. And we just talked about usage, and so this first point I think stands out. So this is across to 80% of consumers wear masks all or most of the time when in public. And so Nate, this is for the entire United States, this data?
Yeah, it's a cross sampling of everybody in the US. So we, for this, we surveyed, I think it was several hundred people, and we asked, we asked about their behaviors of them. And yeah, 80% say that they wear masks all or most of the time when in public.
Yeah, I think it's interesting based on where you're located. We live in the Philadelphia area. Whenever I go out into definitely when I'm ever going to a store, even a restaurant, it's almost 100% of people are wearing masks. So I think it's very, very prevalent. It's very prevalent in our area. It may not be as prevalent as other areas of the country. That's a point of controversy. But I think the 80% average, I think, to me at least, demonstrates that just on average, on the vast whole, pretty much masks are nearly everywhere.
I can't remember the last time it was that I went out somewhere without one. It doesn't mean that if I'm riding my bike along the Delaware River, that I'm wearing a mask. I'm not, right? But I have one in my pocket. So if I stop and I go into a store or something along one of the little towns, I'm going to have it on me. So yeah, no, I wear it. It's going to seem weird the next time you walk into a store or a church or a school or your workplace without one. I think it's going to seem really, really unusual to me, because right now it seems just so foreign.
I've had dreams / nightmares where it's like I'm back in the office and nobody's wearing a mask. Like those are the COVID dreams that we're having this year.
Yeah. Right.
All right, Kyle, can you bring back up the presentation? So I want to go over the next point. So this is interesting. It's 61% of women would be more likely to do business with the advertiser who gave them a promo mask, and I think that's higher than men, because I think it was 53% of men compared to 61% of women. And we saw that also, I think, with women are more likely to have a more favorable opinion of the advertiser. Does that surprise you at all that it's a little bit more women than men who are responding favorably to these masks?
No, that's actually a trend that I think we see with a lot of promotional products, is that women who receive a promotional product that they're using. And I think that's important distinction to make. They have to want it. It has to be something that is has utility to them. They tend to look a little bit more favorably on the advertiser than do their male counterparts. So does it surprise me? No. Most things in this study actually do surprise me, because I don't always know what's going to come out. That's one of the things, though, that is fairly consistent, is that women have a very favorable view of the companies that give the promotional products to them, and they will. And as this slide particularly indicates, they're definitely more likely to do business. I mean, 61% increase in overall added likelihood to do business with a company is huge, no matter what metric you're looking at. So it's a gigantic improvement.
All right, Kyle, let's go to the next slide here. So this says 52% of consumers would keep a logoed mask for more than 3 months. I would say that some haven't had a mask for 3 months. Maybe some have had, but in the grand scheme of how long promo items are typically kept. What does this say to you, Nate?
What it says to me that the potential is very strong, in that they're not being treated as throwaway items, right?
Mhm.
So listen, a lot of promotional items have an average lifespan of 10, 12 months or greater. And if you think about like some of them, which I would consider to be a little bit more durable, like outerwear, right, or drinkware. I have some drinkware. I have some pint glasses that I've had no life like 16 years. Um, but a mask is a new item. And so, you're asking this not only with current behaviors, but also anticipated behaviors. And the way we phrase that is if you received a logo mask that you liked from a company that you liked, how often would you wear it? And it comes out to half of them are saying, yeah, I'd keep it for more than 3 months. Reality is they're not going to throw it out. People are going to keep it until it no longer benefits them, until either they A, don't need it, or B, it stops working. And, that often speaks to the quality of it. Obviously, there are single-use masks out there, and I mean, let's be clear, nobody really uses them as single-use masks. They keep using them until they get worn down, or they're dirty, or they break. So I think that by giving away a good quality mask, one that's attractive, one that has has everything that people are looking for from a safety ratings, what you're going to find out is that people will keep them, and they're going to hold on to them until they no longer serve a purpose.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what people's limit is for the number of masks they have. It's going to be higher for some, it's going to be lower for others. But we're just starting out with this. So if you have a few masks, it seems like people are more likely to keep them. Like what's going to be that limit? It's sort of like to me like tote bags. Like at some point, we've got like 30, 40 branded tote bags, and it's like, oh, another tote bag. I don't need one. Like what's going to be that number? It's something we didn't ask, but like what's going to be that number that people are going to say like I don't need another mask?
A number that's a lot greater than where it is right now. Mm-hmm. Like that's what it is right now. If you think I have a branded mask, one, right, and that doesn't include the one that one of my friends made, out of New York Giants. Sure. That
should cover your entire face because you need to hide your face as a Giants fan. That's a separate story.
Okay, Eagles fan. So the point is that the market is so far away from being saturated. I don't even think it matters right now. Like it's so people are going to need a lot more. People are going to go through a lot more than they currently have.
Yeah.
And so the opportunity there for, again, offering these very timely items, which are still, let's be clear, trying to find them in any type of a fashion, forward way is not easy to do yet, unless you know somebody who makes them. So again, the opportunity I think is very strongly there, and it's so far away from being saturated.
Yeah. So in fact, Danielle here posted that the masks have been a fashion accessory in Hawaii from day one. So I think that's going to be something interesting. Where again, like you have different masks for different purposes. Are you wearing them? Are you wearing them in a Are you wearing them out and you want to wear them as more of again as a fashion accessory? So you're looking for look, you're looking for pattern. Are you just looking for functionality? Like what's your purpose in the mask, and what are you looking to get from it? My wife has bought a couple masks from Vera Bradley. There's an outlet in Delaware, and mm-hmm. she really likes it. She stopped in, she bought them. She likes the pattern. That's a fashion choice. It'll be interesting to see if promo masks can bridge that gap beyond sort of just being functional or being handy into being an actual fashionable choice for people.
I don't see any reason why they can't. I mean, it's happened that way, I think, with a lot of other items, like a lot of other promo items, whether you're talking about T-shirts, which are, one of the most important things about how they look, right? Or, drinkware. When you talk about the, drinkware has undergone such a, massive transformation over the last couple of years from being, single wall, aluminum bottles that freeze your hands when you touch them to what we have now, where people look at them like, all right, that's pretty cool. I like the way that looks. So I think that the market for the promotional has certainly sped up in that respect to it now being much more contemporary than it used to be. So yeah, I think it's definitely possible to be there.
All right, Kyle, let's bring back up the slides here and we can go to our next data point. So this says that 34% of consumers report they would use their logoed mask on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And Kyle, just go to the next one, the next slide, because I think we can look at these in tandem. So the percent of consumers who have a more favorable opinion of an advertiser who gave them a logoed mask. And you can see the different demographics here. 52% of millennials, 61% of Gen X, let's say, and and for the boomers, it's 42%. So Nate, what does this what does these data points suggest to you?
It says to me that Gen Xers are much more likely to wear masks than the other two groups.
Oh, sure. That's why I pay the big bucks for your top level insights.
Right, that's what it says to me. It says to me that they're going to be used very often, and that, as with all advertising and all promotional items, it's important to know who you're giving them to and who your audience is, and to work with the clients to understand what they are. Depending on where you live, if your client is primarily targeting, baby boomers, maybe a mask isn't the best item to give out, right? Even today, maybe it's not. They live in Florida and they don't want to wear it. Okay, it's not mandatory. But if you're targeting, families, and in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and you're targeting, parents, well, yeah, then masks are certainly something you should look to give out. So I think that's sort of the way to use this data, and that's the way to use this data throughout. It's not just meant to be, okay, we're going to, everything's great for everybody. It depends on who exactly you're selling to and who your clients are. And that's why we have these, we've created the graphics as sort of like standalone items, so that they can be easily inserted into presentations and easily, put into and used in social media. That's sort of the genesis behind it.
So Kyle, let's just scroll down. We got one more mask slide here to show. And so this is speaking to things we just discussed. 57% consumers would be more likely to do business with the advertiser who gave them a promo mask. And then we don't have it here in this presentation, but in the full report, we found that 61% of consumers report that they don't yet own a logoed mask. So I think there's a big gap here where, like you said, there's a lot of room, and the market's not saturated yet for companies and organizations to be giving them out, because a lot of people still don't have a branded mask, and the payoffs seem pretty rich.
Oh my God, yeah. I think most of the branded masks that people might own might actually be from their employers, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because when you look at the overall market penetration of other promotional items, it's 90%. 90% of people own T-shirts, 90% of people own branded drinkware. And I'll be honest with you, I'm shocked that that's not even 100% of people actually did a little bit more digging in their closets or drawers. So I think that when you start looking at, again, the possible and the potential for giving out branded masks to customers and to prospects, it's huge.
So for our listeners, if you already have a branded mask, if there's one that's your favorite, feel free to chime in. We're happy to hear what people have and what they're wearing. I would just add one more thing on the subject of masks. It's interesting. I remember when this started out, and you first started to see people wearing this mask in general, not necessarily branded masks, but just masks in general, whether it was the surgical ones or medical ones. There was a lively discussion in the industry about whether masks should be branded in the first place, whether it was opportunism. And it's interesting to see how quickly that turned, and how now it's sort of it's a common sort of tool, it's a common like weapon in the arsenal that promo distributors have that they can be selling right now.
Yeah, early on there just wasn't time.
Yeah.
Like everything else, nobody knew exactly what to do. Nobody knew what was coming. Nobody knew what was next. So basically, when you had the opportunity to do something, or to sell something, or to help one of your clients out with something that you normally wouldn't, that's what you did.
Yeah. So again, there's more data on masks. This is definitely the most interesting things, because it's just such a new category for us. And again, the full study that and Melissa posted it in our chat here, where you can download it, has more information on masks if you're curious. And the October issue of Advantages, our senior executive web editor Teresa Hegel did a great article on masks and how promo companies have sort of upgraded and improved masks, and how they're now decorating them. And so it's a very interesting look in how masks are being sort of tailored specifically for the promo industry. So again, that'll be That'll be in the October issue of Advantages, and I think it's online right now as well. So I think that's well worth reading if you're a distributor. Okay, so we're going to move on to other topics, and we won't spend as much time on these as we did mass, but just some other interesting things. Kyle, if you could just bring up the presentation again. Just want to talk about environmentally friendly products. This has been definitely a growing trend the past couple years in the industry, and this was a very interesting finding to me about the percent of consumers who purchased more environmentally products in 2019 than 2018. You can see that boomers, a greater percentage of them were purchasing more products than either Gen X or millennials, which seems to be an inversion of what our perceptions are in terms of that millennials, Gen Z, they're the ones who are thought to be the most environmentally friendly and thinking about sustainability and all those buzzwords. But it's interesting the reversal here. What can you read into this, Nate?
Yeah, I was shocked. I checked the numbers on these so many times to make sure I didn't reverse the scales, to be honest with you. So, what I read into it is a couple of things. One is that very often environmentally friendly products are more expensive, right? So it's very often the older consumers that have more money. The difference isn't quite, it's not staggering, right? Between 27% for Gen X and 31% for boomers.
Sure.
But it's certainly a trend that you see. So I guess what I would say is that if your clients are concerned about, whether or not the environmentally friendly products would be received well by a certain audience, yeah, they would be. They're going to be received well by all. And this doesn't necessarily speak to, this is kind of important, how clients feel about environmentally friendly products. They, overall, the positive opinions about a product that they receive that they know is environmentally friendly is very positive across the board. Here we're talking about actual behaviors, right? So here they're actually purchasing them. But even moving beyond this, definitely don't be afraid, if whomever you are, to share ideas to your clients about options for environmentally friendly products, because they're going to have a halo effect over that entire brand.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's been interesting is that during the pandemic this year, when sales were dropping and budgets were pretty much frozen, is how's that going to affect this sustainability trend? Because it's really been notable the past couple of years, and there's been a lot of demand from consumers and even from companies now that they have specific requirements that they're asking distributors to meet when they're sourcing products and when they're providing services for these companies. And so, would the pandemic and the recession impact that sustainability drive? From what we've heard, at least from what me talking to distributors, is that I think there has been, but not as much as you might expect. I think in the next year or two, the sustainability trend will prove itself stronger than the issues that are affecting the economy, and that it's not going away. What do you think, Nate?
So everything goes in cycles, right? Going back to the beginning of this year and into last year, everything was focused on the single-use bag bans. Right? That's going to be happening. And then tote bags come in, and then all of a sudden I was like, whoa, maybe that's not the way it's going to go. I think what you're going to see is that over time, sustainability is going to continue to grow. Nothing ever moves in a straight line, right? It's always going to be, setbacks. There's going to be, times in society when things become much more important, then become less important. But I think overall the trend in terms of sustainable items and environmentally friendly items is going to continue to move in a much more positive direction.
Yep, I agree. So we're going to touch on some other things. Again, if you have questions for Nate about the study, about anything, feel free to post them in our chat here. We will get to them. So Kyle, can you bring up the next slide in our thing? So here's about Made in USA, which is it's definitely it's been spotlighted this year because one being an election year, and obviously other concerns in terms of sourcing abroad, lots of different things. So this was interesting to me. The percent of consumers who increased purchases of Made in USA products in 2019. So boomers 32%, Gen X 24%, and then Gen Z and millennial 22%. That's pretty even, considering I would say that made in USA, and especially sometimes the higher cost with made in USA, is typically, I think, viewed as sort of an older demo, something that's more of a need by the older demographic versus maybe a want by the younger demographic. And so what I'm curious about, what you're seeing, Nate, is from the results of the survey this year and sort of the just being seeing all the sales data, do you see a change in how made in USA is being viewed, whether because of the election or the pandemic or any other reasons?
Well, I think that, if you were to think about it in terms of where we are at right now, and, unfortunately, this is one of the questions that was fielded before the pandemic started.
Sure.
But we're going to be looking at it again for next year when we do the study. I think there's certainly there's going to be a movement, much more concerted movement towards made in the USA, especially as, I don't need to tell people in this industry that there's been supply chain disruptions in products coming from China. So, and that's really what we're talking about in the promotional products industry. Sure, there's other countries that supply promotional products, but it's China. I think what you've seen, though, with consumers is that there has been a movement towards desire to purchase more made in the USA products. The challenge, of course, though, is if they can find them at a somewhat price competitive point. People know that made in the USA tends to cost more, not always, but it tends to, and they're okay with that. They're okay with paying a premium for it. But again, it has to be a reasonable premium, and sort of like running in concert with what we saw with the environmentally friendly products. Yeah, the older generation tends to be the ones who are more able and willing to do so, and that sort of holds true. But no, even like similar to what we see with this environmentally friendly, and we have this data on a state level basis, which is also available in the 2019 version of the ad impression study, or at least a regional state basis. And what we could see is, what depending on what area of the country you're in, you will have a more favorable opinion of an advertiser if they gave you a product that was made in the USA or a product that was environmentally friendly than in others. So that's just another way to use the data, where if you're dealing with a client in California versus a client in Texas or Kansas, you tailor your recommendations for what is most suited to those consumers, and all of that data is also available on ASI Central.
Yeah, and this one interesting point is that this year there was a mad scramble for products and a need for products quickly. Now, not everything was available from overseas in that short time frame. And a lot of companies turned to domestic sources to find those products. I just wonder if it's going to make a difference there, where having had that experience, they see some of the wisdom, or at least the good things about doing made in USA and local, or if that was just sort of a exception and they're going to go back to their old ways.
I think it can be both, right? I mean, sure, it was the exception, and so it certainly helped out some domestic companies greatly, incredibly, in Q2 and Q3 when everything else when other things were hurting. But I also think that based on, it's what else are they getting? It's not only the fact that they could get the products, but how quickly could they get the products? With what level of effort could they get the products? And I think if all of those things continue to improve, and the differences are noted, I think that there's certainly a space where they can capture additional market share that they might have had before.
All right, so let's move on to the next part of our presentation, our slides. So in my line of questions here, I have my list of questions here. I wrote USBs over power banks, WTF. That's one of my sentiments, because again, so gave a choice for consumers. 56% would choose a USB drive over a power bank, which just amazed me, because the narrative of the industry in the past few years is that USBs are done, they're outdated, no one wants them, and power banks are the cool new thing. And this particular data point completely contradicts that.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of contradicts it, right? I mean, so what exactly do I make of this, right? What I make of this is that there's an ebb and flow that takes place over time that people just don't always see. And it's not saying that nobody wants a power bank. They do, but power banks have had issues in the past. And in the recent past, then if not power banks, then there's concerns about batteries and where they're coming from and product safety. You don't have those product safety concerns with a USB drive. And another thing to recognize is that just because it's familiar to us in the industry doesn't mean that everybody has them. And it also points out that they're still seen as a technology item. People love getting tech items. And if your client is doing something with a university, with a organization that has to distribute out marketing materials or brochures and such, you can't really do that with a power bank, but you can automatically install those on a USB drive, and people will hold on to them. So, don't, just because we think something doesn't mean that everybody thinks. And I think that's just an overall important lesson for, across the study.
So Danielle had a very good question. Did we separate the USB data by age group? And the answer is yes. So we don't have it up here, but I'll tell you what the breakdown is. So again, 18 to 34-year-olds, 50% would choose the USB drive over the power bank. 35 to 54-year-olds, 55%. 55 and over, 61%. So yeah, I think there is an age split, and it's definitely skewing older. Is that? I mean, that's still 50%. Half of Gen Z and millennials would take the USB drive. So I think even though it skews a little older, to me, I mean that's still pretty fascinating that kids who don't even know what like a hard drive is, and everything's stored in the cloud, would choose a USB drive.
Sure, everything's stored in the cloud, but it doesn't mean it's not. One thing I've learned is things in the cloud aren't always accessible. I wish they were, right? But they're not. And as I mentioned earlier, my daughter's in college, and yeah, they can email things to each other, but there's still times where you want to have a physical backup of it. And if you're working with things that are just on Chromebooks and everything's stored in the cloud, and you need to access it, or I need to work it on my computer, and I'm not able to get onto your network for whatever reason because my son forgot his password. There's a need for it, and there's every 19, 20, 21-year-old out there also has a power bank because they're on their phones 15 hours a day. They never shut them down, and they're always out and about. They don't all have a USB drive, even though the perception is that they're everywhere. They're not, and so there's still. It's just because, again, it's because we think that they're ubiquitous and everywhere, and nobody needs them anymore. Doesn't mean it's actually true.
Yeah, and sometimes we're guilty of it as magazines and content providers, where it's always like, oh, what's cool and new, because that's what our readers want. They turn to us to look for cool and new products. But there are items that are continually bestsellers for a reason, and I think it's important as distributors in the industry to not forget that fact.
Yeah, I mean, using the logic, everybody has 50 T-shirts. Doesn't mean if you get a T-shirt, you're not going to want another one.
So a couple more questions, Nate. One about I don't have the stat up for this, but in terms of products being given out versus being sold, that's something we measure in the study. Do you see that being affected at all by the current economic conditions?
Yeah. To be blunt, I mean, yeah, I think everything's being affected by it, but until you have the return of large events, conferences, trade shows, concerts, any graduations, God, you just keep going down the list of all of the different things that you're really not having anymore. It makes it more challenging to give out promo products on a large scale, right? But one thing that we've seen over the years, and we've seen this not only from consumers, but we've also asked distributors very bluntly about this, about whether or not the products that they were creating or selling to their clients were being given away or sold. Right? Just straight up, there's been a movement towards consumers more willing to pay for products that have the brands on them that they like. So if I like Dogfish Head, which I do, right? If I go to the Dogfish Head Brewery in Milton, Delaware, probably walking out of there with some promo items that I'm paying a good amount of money for, and I'm going to wear them, and they're getting free advertising from me, even though I already paid them for the item. So I think that there's certainly been a movement over the years towards that, and that's not abating, right? Kids nowadays will wear the brands that they identify with. Adults wear brands that they identify with, and now, yeah, if you give them away, if I get one for free, awesome. But if I don't get them for free, I'm going to buy them. And that's been a movement that's been going on for years. So it's the way it's being impacted is just until things get back to normal, it's a little bit more challenging to find products, to find ways to give away products at a large scale. That's how it's changing.
Okay, so all right, so Kyle, can you bring up the presentation again? Just one last slide in here, and just a reminder: if you got any questions for Nate regarding the ad impression study or other things that we can measure for research for ASI, just feel free to type it into the chat box. Okay, so this is the last data we're just going to show here on our live today. This just demonstrates the effectiveness of promotional products, which is something which is a main goal of the ad impression study. So
sure,
85% of promo product recipients remember the advertiser worldwide, and that's specifically for apparel items which have the highest recall. And I think that's a great number, and it shows why promo products are so effective, as does all the other data points in the study. My question for you, Nate, is sort of in this industry's continual push to be viewed as sort of a legitimate marketing medium. Where do you think promo products stand this year, and how do you think they're doing in that fight?
You mean versus other types of media?
Yeah.
I think I don't need to tell anybody here that's a struggle versus what you run into in digital media, right? Where everything's so metrics driven. However, I think in terms of other types of media, if you're talking about print advertising or outdoor advertising or TV advertising, it certainly compares very, very favorably. And even thinking again about the digital advertising, everything's so metrics driven. Yeah, it's great. It's metric driven, but people don't like digital advertising, right? They don't show off digital advertising if it looks good to their family. They don't show it off to their friends if they like it. And I think that's one of the things that, and it's so unique to our industry and so unique to our advertising medium that we can do that. If I get a promo product and I don't want it, or I have too many of them, I'm not throwing it away. I'm giving it to somebody. I'm giving it to a colleague. I'm giving it to a friend, a family member. So I think in terms of when you look at the advertising continuum, all the different choices people have, I think that's really what makes us unique. People remember the product because they see it over and over and over again. When I need to remember a phone number or a credit card number, I'll put it on a Post-it note on my computer screen, and I'll look at it every time I sit down. I'll look at it, and then I'm eventually going to remember it. If I have a mug that I use all the time and it has a company on it, I'm going to use it all the time if it's a good quality. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to remember it. And that way, when I need a product that company provides, I'm going to go to them because I don't have to, reinvest my time and energy into thinking about it again. That just doesn't happen with other forms of advertising. So I think that when you look at this 85% recall for apparel items, it's high for all items that have a frequent usage. So, when people get a mask, they're going to know who gives it to them. When they get a pen, they're going to remember who gave it to them. And that's something that just doesn't happen with other forms of advertising.
So Nate, just to wrap up, with this study, is there anything you want to add, and what do you want our viewers and our listeners to take away from it?
I want everybody to know that we create this study. This study is not sponsored, right? We don't go out to our members and say, hey, we want you to sponsor this. Hey, we want you to pay for us to do this. We do this because for our membership, my job is always as in research is to provide products, make sure that ASI provides products and services that meet our members' needs. And this is one of the products that I think we provide that really meets our members' needs. And it gives them, so use it with your clients, use it in your social media feed. Use it on your presentations. People love data, and now when you're speaking to them, you're not only speaking in the hypotheticals, you're also speaking with actual data behind them. And if they ask, let them know that we've interviewed well over 250,000 people for this study over the last several years, and we interviewed 50 to 100,000 people. every year for this study. So we go out there and we really put a lot of time, money, and effort into the study, and it's purely so that people can use it.
Okay, well, great. As a reminder, again, you can download the study, a full copy of it for free on our website, asicentral.com. It's also posted in the chat window here on our live stream. And there's a lot more data than what we covered here. We were just barely just skimming the surface. There's a lot to dig into, and like Nate said earlier, all these little data points, they're all sort of, you can be saved separately, and then you can use them in your presentations or send them to clients by email. They can all be separated out and used as you see fit. So there's a wealth of information to choose from. So Nate, thank you again for your time today.
Thanks, CJ.
All right, and thank you everybody for watching and listening. I hope you have a great day.